My name is Jason S.C. Fong, and this is Vanilla Club Podcast. In today's episode, we speak to Canine Reaper. Canine Reaper is a self-described average bloke in his beloved country of South Africa who is doing what he can as a volunteer, as an impromptu protection officer in what is a dire socioeconomic situation. In this intimate episode, he shares some never before heard stories about his youth in the Republic of South Africa. We talk about civil society and the collapse of the institutions that once powered a highly functioning country, albeit one that was an apartheid country. We get into some of the social issues that are faced by South Africa today. We talk about crime. We get into some of the CIT heists, the cash in transit heists, which anyone who follows K9 knows very well is a almost daily occurrence in many cities in South Africa. We talk a little bit about the softer side of things. Despite all of the bad things going on, how South Africa is an unbelievably beautiful place. I think he presented the situation as I believe he sees it. The amount of love that he has for his country really does shine through. It's just not even a factor in his thinking that he would somehow leave. South Africa is in so many ways beset by a number of complex, difficult, nested problems. But despite what looks like futility, there's so many reasons to be hopeful. Please enjoy this episode. Indigenous Voices Matter. K9, welcome to the Vanilla Club Podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us on here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I look forward to it. It's been a long time in the making, right?
It has.
It's like a year or something.
It has.
Just over.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, your X account is one of the most, as I would characterize it, electrifying X accounts on all of what is formerly Twitter. You're taking us in as a citizen journalist into the bowels of what is one of the most undertold stories, in my opinion. There are so many good people in your country, and it's a story that for some reason the mass media just doesn't want to pick up. Let's just jump in. I like to begin really getting into just more of the tactical stuff, if that sounds good to you, because there's a lot about your day-to-day. I know a lot of the American audience is really super interested in some of the gear and the sort of rigs and get-ups and things like that. But let's just break it down like, okay, cash in transit heist. What are they?
Right. So a cash and transit heist. Funny enough, on X, I had to go from calling it a CIT, which is obviously the abbreviation, to actually calling it a cash and transit heist because the international followers and stuff, they were not sure what a CIT was. So basically in South Africa, CIT, a cash and transit heist, it's just a armored money van moving a substantial amount of cash that gets hit, and then the cash is obviously extracted. But it's a hell of a process that they go through. So a cash and transit heist. So we start off with saying, okay, a cash and transit team consists of between 4 to 5 armed members, depending on the company. Not every single company has the exact same profile, but in general, you can only move money one way, and that is with an armored van. So they tend to follow the same procedures. So you got 4 to 5 guys. Maybe out of those guys, 3 will have handguns and 2 will have rifles,
Mm.
if they're lucky. Not they don't always get rifles, unfortunately, because I mean, there is cost-cutting matters, involved in this. Now, cash and transit heists, they can be brutal. There's a lot of stories out there where the team hitting the van wants as little resistance as possible. So
Mm.
they tend to be as initially violent as possible in order to facilitate, getting the job done. So there's instances where the usual manner, firstly, the van gets rammed off the road. So they pick high-end, generally Audis, BMWs, Mercedes, those type of vehicles, high-end sports cars, and they ram the vans off the road. And funny enough, in a lot of the interviews that these CIT heist guys give, they actually tell you they choose these cars because the survivability of the crew inside that car is a lot higher than if they chose something else.
Wow.
So that's interesting. And then they'll ram the van. Now, for the life of me, I don't understand why they have never changed the design, but the van's are actually really easy to hit on the side, and then the whole thing just sort of falls over. It's really
Mm.
top heavy. That armor weighs a lot. And then they try to get the crew to give up. But now that's where things get interesting. The methods that they use, they go from anything from pouring literal petrol, fuel, gas, whatever everybody's calling it, in onto the hold, and they threaten to ignite it if the crew does not give up inside. There are cases where they walk up to the bulletproof glass and they will take a picture of the crew's family and they'll just like a photo and put it on the glass. And that family, that crew inside, immediately, surrenders. If you think to yourself, the amount of inside job that goes on in here for them to get that information, like family members. And with that being said, it's also important to note, and sorry, I am trying to fit as much in here in the time that we've got. Um, with that being said, a lot of these jobs are inside jobs. Yeah,
Mm.
it's a known matter of fact. A lot of them are inside jobs. Uh, and so anyway, so they'll do that, and then the van gets blown open. Now, whether the crew is in that van when it gets blown open or they're on the outside of the van is up to the crew at the end of the day. Then there's that caveat to that as well, where sometimes in some cases the crew surrenders and they might just go and execute one or two of them just for the sake of doing it. Because again, violence wins. Violence in this game really wins at the end of the day.
Mm.
Now this poor crew who has a loadout of call it 2 9mm or 3 9mm and 2 rifles has less than maybe a maximum of call it 150 rounds of ammunition between all of them, has to go up against 15 to 16 heavily armed guys with automatic firepower. And we're talking 7.62 by 39 coming out of AKs. You're talking 5.56 by, what is it, 45, 41? I can't remember now. My followers are going to absolutely slaughter me for that because I can't remember now for some reason. But uh, they're then getting hit with automatic gunfire and they just spray indiscriminately. They do not care who, what, where, and how. And they train for this too. So the van gets hit, it rolls on its side. They then go through the process of trying to get the crew out. And while that's going down, you've got stopper groups. So you've got guys ahead of the column and guys at the back to engage any first responders. And they do engage, believe me. There's been a lot of instances where people driving down the road, and just because the vehicle might look like a police vehicle or it's got security company branding on it, they open fire. They spray that immediately with bullets. And you'll see it in a lot of the videos I post. They just literally open fire. Um, Anyway, so they'll then bomb the doors open. Generally, they prefer to bomb the doors out the back. In most cases, it's a whole like scientific thing where basically they get less destruction, but the doors come off, and then the money is sort of blown into the air, which is actually what they want. Because if they don't destroy the system that carries the money, there's a foam that immediately disperses and hardens, and you just cannot get through that foam.
Mm.
And yeah, they will also bring rakes, garden rake to the scene
Mm.
because they've got to rake up the money, um, which is quite
That
hilarious.
must be a scene. Yeah.
And in some cases, these guys will actually go. This is not something I've posted about before. I just realized, but they will go to the shooting range, any shooting range, and they'll go shoot, and they'll pick up all the brass cases from everybody, and they'll sprinkle those brass cases all over the scene. So you've got 5 million fingerprints from half of, I don't know, Johannesburg there. So the police, there's literally nothing they can get. And then of course when they're done, any vehicles that are abandoned on scene or satellite. Uh, and that is the long and short of it. There's a little bit more, like before before they pull off the heist, they go to a sangoma. Now, a sangoma is a traditional doctor here in South Africa. And that sangoma will give them a mixture of um, potions and all sorts of things that they can take to make the heist a success. And in some cases, these guys will really believe, and I kid you not, they'll really believe that this stuff makes them either bulletproof or less likely to die, etc. Then this is where the funny part comes in again, because South Africa loves this corruption, right? And the Sankomas are definitely not new to that. So what the Sangoma does is he will charge them every time they come to him, like 50 grand or something, for them to come and seek wisdom from him to know, okay, should we pull the heist off now? Is now a good time? So that Sangoma will keep going and keep accruing funds from them until he says, okay, cool, go ahead, good luck. But he's got like 150 grand now. He doesn't care what happens to them, so he's doing well. So yeah, that is the long and short of it. It's a big industry. South Africa sees there are months where we can see on average one a day, depending on how it's going. Otherwise, in general, you will see about 3 to 5 a week. And there has been cases, we got to be honest, where there haven't been any at all for a few weeks that go past. But yeah, there's a lot of money to be made. However, you're selling your soul at the end of the day, because if you get injured out there, your buddies are going to leave you behind. No CIT guys are going to try and pick you up. In fact, some of those teams, and there's footage of it, which I haven't posted, but if their buddies get injured, they drive along, they execute the injured buddy in the car, and they just throw his body out the vehicle. I mean, they don't trust each other or anything. So yeah, that is the long and short of that. It's quite the industry, eh?
Absolutely. And this is, again, I think humans have a lot higher threshold for understanding political violence in a way. But when you talk about what you're describing, which is organized criminal activity, it's a vacuum of state control combined with vying factions, a lack of overall social order, right? I don't know if you'd characterize it exactly that way, but from an outsider's point of view, those would be the sort of basic elements, missing a political agenda, which to me, that's a lot more scary to me as a just average punter looking at the situation. Something, you give me a situation like, I don't know, Syria with ISIS, where there's a religious lens to it. I can understand that better, right? It's obviously there could be the same exact level of violence that I may face, but I can still understand that better.
Right. So 100%. So on our side of the world, we have a complete lack of government oversight. Okay, there's nothing. There's no control. Well, to be fair, there's next to no control. Let's not dive deep down the rabbit hole, but there's next to no control. And yes, we don't have yet. we don't have the idea of, okay, let's be religious minded, and depending on whatever path someone chooses within their religion, they go and decide to blow themselves up or whatever the case may be. Or you can go down the other path and they choose to all lock each other up in a room or whatever and follow something. We don't necessarily have that at this stage. I think in South Africa right now, the average person, I mean, that's me, everybody, we're all just trying to get by, right? We're all just trying to survive, get through the day. And we just want to live and have a family, and do things. Yes, we have a massive crime and violence, and that word you use, lawlessness problem, which is what it is. That is the honest truth at the end of the day. But with that being said, we also have a lot of guys trying to do good, that are trying to put a stop to it. So there are good guys in the police force. There are good guys in the private security industry. There are even, believe it or not, good politicians here who are actually trying to support the cause and help us fight it in any way they can. But yes, we have a massive, massive violence problem. Just minus the we'll call it the Syria ISIS-ness
Yep.
vibe. You know, we don't have the drive to do, I don't know, like civil war things, or people choosing routes and blowing themselves up or blowing up others, or, you know, things like that at this stage. Yeah, thankfully.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a line in the Michael Fassbender Brad Pitt movie, The Counselor, where I think Brad Pitt says, he's got this really pithy line where he says, you know, man, listen, there isn't this burning cauldron of rage at the end of it, you know?
Yeah,
And I
I
think
remember. Yeah,
you remember that line.
yeah,
You know,
I was
and
waiting for it.
you know, that really, it captures a little bit of, you know, maybe an outsider sort of guess, you know, our best guess of what it might be inside there, where it's just as you know, took us through those steps of that cash in transit, you know, the CIT heist. I mean, it could have been your friend or your, you know, associate or something. He gets injured. He becomes a liability. I guess he could talk. He might take too many resources in trying to rescue. So he's, you know, he's out. He's done, you know, and it's not because they have some real beef. It's just, well, you know, this is just
They just want to make it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
just like I want to make it, so do they.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, and there have been cases where there have been survivors on, let's call it the bad guy side, on the CIT thing, and you talk to them and you ask them, what were you going to do with the money?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's the strangest thing, because some of the guys, I mean, I'll never forget. There's an interview I must try and find for you. I'll pop it in your DMs, where he was saying he was going to pay off his kids' school fees and buy a house for the wife and kids, and then the rest he was just going to blow on alcohol and cars and whatever the case may be. And then there are others who take that money and they put it towards the next heist. They get better gear, they get better equipment, they can hire more guys, because some of these dudes want money up front. Some of them go out there on the, I don't know, confirmation that they are going to get a share in the profits, and they do share that profit. Believe me, there's a hell of a lot of sharing that they can make. And in other cases, a good portion of that money goes to, unfortunately, maybe to the local police force. They pay off informants, their own informants,
Mm.
because the bad guys have their own networks, or they'll pay off the cops, or sometimes they even pay off bloody politicians, I suppose. The sky's the limit there. So yeah, at the end of the day, that is unfortunately the case. But we've got to bear in mind that, especially down in, for example, take KZN, KwaZulu-Natal, there is a police general down there, Mkhwanazi. He is doing an incredible job in fighting hardened criminals. Now,
Mm.
he was an ex or current, I cannot recall, special task force member or team leader, and he knows what he's doing. He's got a select team, and they are taking care of business. I mean, the majority of their success reports, it's like 5 guys down, 6 guys down, maybe 8 down, 2 down, whatever. I mean, they are nailing the CIT and kidnapping side left, right, and center. And it's exactly what you want to see at the end of the day. So yeah, with that burning cauldron at the end of the day, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So set the scene for us a little bit. For those of us who've never been to South Africa, we've never maybe even been to the continent of Africa, right? I mean, let's get a few basics to start us off, right? You're in the southern tip of the continent. It is a multiracial country. It is a country that had was a pariah state in the last 30, 40 years of the 20th century. That was then undone in 1994. The ANC took over at that point, and they've been in power ever since. Give us a little bit of background in terms of, and again, there's Johannesburg, Josie, City of Gold. Yeah. I'd love to check it out one day. I'd really love to check it out one day. That is Pretoria is the capital. Johannesburg is the business hub, the main commercial center. Cape Town is arguably the most sort of scenic, beautiful, tourist oriented area. I mean, there's so many places to go visit, right?
Right. We would take it as, when you mentioned Cape Town, maybe look at Cape Town rather as call it the Western Cape as a whole, one of our provinces. Very, very beautiful part of the country. But where I am as well, which is actually Gauteng province, it's stunning up here too. But obviously, depending on where you go. But yeah.
Mm. And again, just like judging by your X feed, just like, yeah, you could be driving down the street and then there's an elephant, or, you're up here doing a road trip, there's a giraffe. I mean, this is part of the milieu of
Okay.
Right? I mean, maybe not, I mean, it's a bit Hollywood exaggeration, but I mean, help us set the scene a little bit. What is it like? Maybe not just in Gauteng, but in the places that you've traveled to in your country.
Okay, so I can't help but think of the American thing where a lot of them have the idea that we've got lions roaming in our backyards and
Yeah, right.
right, all the fun things. But I'll be honest with everybody, all the listeners and people I'm going to share this to later and whatever the case may be. I do post a lot of bad, unfortunately, about South Africa as a whole. Okay, this is part of setting the scene. But with that being said, it's only because I want to bring attention to what's happening. I mean, because it's so bad. But with that being said, we live in an absolutely beautiful, beautiful country at the end of the day, and South Africans are great people. Believe it or not, what you're seeing on X regarding a lot of things, a lot of it is lacking context, firstly, and not just lacking context, but it's a platform, and people want to share their message at the end of the day. They want their idea coming across. So to set the scene, so Johannesburg is, like you say, it's a central business hub, sort of for the country. We've got Sandton. Sandton is, I do not recall if it is or was, but I'm just going to say it is the richest square mile in Africa. That is Sandton. It's a wealthy business hub where you've got all the banking, mining, construction, main head offices and things like that, where they do their business. With that being said, you've got different parts of Johannesburg. The most well-known parts would be sort of East Rand, West Rand, Joburg South, and then yes, yeah. Alexander Township is there. Alexander Township borders Sandton, and large portions of the township actually fall within the Sandton postal stamp designation sort of vibe. Now, that's actually an interesting look at it because Alexander Township, we're going to stray a little bit off the scene there, but that used to be just a piece of land, right? There was nothing there. In fact, Alexander Township, if I'm not mistaken, is where Mandela himself went to bury a handgun that he had used during, the struggle times and whatever. So somewhere there, unless it's been found already, there's a piece of collector's item that is worth a hell of a lot of money if it can be proved, if they could pull it out of the ground. But it's just turned into one massive land grab, which then was formalized into a township. The government's got a great way of going, oh, this isn't a land grab. We're just going to throw electricity lines up and put in sewage works and whatever. Now it's official. So yeah, you've got Alexander Township, but you've then also got large mining areas, East Rand, Benoni, that sort of side of the world. There are all the old mining areas. There's a hell of a lot of money sitting there as well. Believe it or not, a lot of people. The joke in South Africa is usually like East Rand guys are a little bit like weird, but some of the biggest money in this country sits there because of the mining situation. With that mining comes the Zama Zama threat. Those are illegal gold miners, usually heavily armed, and they have massive amounts of manpower. You're talking 10,000 people. It's an entire massive operation. I mean, it's like in the military, what is that, like battalion strength or even higher, in terms of manpower. So you've got that, but then I suppose in Johannesburg, we're quite lucky because sort of when you go into the city, we are separated by a lot of green belts. Green belts is like, it's just large open piece of green land that were never built on, and they end up becoming like little forested park areas, which is quite nice. We're not a concrete jungle per se, but again, those green belts unfortunately facilitate crime because the guys are using them as their own network to travel in and out. No one sees them coming
Oh,
and
wow.
going,
That's
especially with copper cable theft.
like in Chappie, like Hippo had
Yes,
his that's basically the green belt right there, right where Hippo was was operating out of.
exactly. And so the green belts are preferences for like copper cable thieves. They
Mm.
like to use green belts to move in and out of and to steal their copper cable, etc. But sorry, I strayed off a little bit there. But basically, Johannesburg, I mean, I can speak for Johannesburg especially. Johannesburg is a nice area. It is, uh, you can live here, you can get by. Look, the infrastructure is degrading, unfortunately. There are, the road infrastructure is all but in just a steep decline. There are no, essentially, there are almost no robots working. Robots for the rest of the world is traffic lights. We call them robots because we're special. And just the general lawlessness, of living here. And people just unfortunately don't see it because I don't post that much in terms of crime. I should actually do a little bit more. But someone averaged it out. I think they said Johannesburg probably sees somewhere around, what did they say? I think it was like 150 to 250 house break-ins every single day. I mean, that is a hell of a lot. There are some countries where they don't even register that in a month. You get what I'm saying? So, yeah, the people up here are nice. You can talk to anybody for the most part. You could literally talk to anyone and they'll talk back to you. They won't have an issue. But then there are obviously places you don't go. So you don't go into, for example, parts of Johannesburg CBD. That area has long gone become a sort of no-go zone for someone who doesn't know what they're doing there. So
Mm.
tourists should, unless they're escorted in there by a company or something, they should not go in there. I mean, those buildings, a lot of them have long gone being taken over. I mean, they stripped the buildings out as an example in the Johannesburg CBD, and then they built shacks, metal shacks inside the buildings to live there. And I strayed a bit there, apologies, but yeah, the whole South African living vibe, it's great here. We got an awesome country for tourists, for example. We're a great place to make business because, again, there's no government oversight, not like the US and other places where you cannot go anywhere without someone
Yeah.
somewhere knowing where you're going. I think, if I may, Australia has gone the same route in a lot of cases.
Sure.
But here, there's nothing. I could, as unfortunate as it is, probably walk outside and shoot a guy and put him in a hole somewhere, and no one would even know he's missing. That is, yeah, that's just the way it's gone. But with that being said, I don't mind that because it means that I don't have to worry about, .gov keeping an eye on things because, yeah, we're sorting the rest out. As a result of that, you've got the private security, not private security, sorry, just the general private industry as a whole is doing all the heavy lifting. So, yeah, it's a great country to be here. It's just, unfortunately, we are reaching levels of decline now where what do we do going forward other than try to
Yeah,
fix it
yeah.
ourselves? And that's what
So,
you're seeing.
so track it. So you've lived your whole life within South Africa. Is that right?
Within South Africa,
Born and
yes, but I
raised.
have traveled through various African countries for a good portion of about 10-ish years or so.
Okay.
Um, and having visited all these African countries, I often tell people you don't know what you're missing if you leave South Africa. You have to leave South Africa first
South
to
Africa.
understand that we're actually living a great life here. I mean, I wouldn't want to go anywhere other than South Africa at the end of the day.
Absolutely. So track it from your childhood, adolescent years, manhood. Like what's been the trend if you had to extract a sort of trend line out of where the country's been, what the situation is like, again, from a more, civilian lifestyle point of view, right? Like I pulled a chart of the USD to the Rand, and it's bloody shocking. Like I
It's
remember
terrifying. Yeah.
It's shocking. I remember meeting someone, a South African in Europe, backpacking in like around the time of the millennium, like 2000, 2001. And I remember, for some reason, I remember the number they told me, because we were, backpacking, you have to exchange money with high frequency. And they were so pissed that it was 4-1 at that time. Right.
Wow. That must have been a long time ago.
Well, that was 2000. It was 2000 or 2001. And it was 4-1. And they were pissed because, in their mind, it had doubled from, or it halved, right? Since, because they refer it back to when it was 2 or 3. But last I checked, it was like 17 or 18 now, which is just shocking.
Well, just the other day, it was 1921 or something to the USD. I think that wasn't even a week or two ago. So to track South Africa from my youth and from what I recall, I remember a lot of cases where I used to walk to the local cafe on the corner. I used to walk with my gran, and this is weird because I never do the personal stuff, but I used to walk with my gran, and we would go and get like a chocolate slab or something and a pie, because that's just a South African thing, and we then walk back and whatever. But if I see what I see now, right, I would never in my life allow someone else to do that. Not a chance. In the majority of the city, unfortunately. Look, there are a lot of places where you can, and you'll be perfectly fine, but there are a lot of places where you just do not do that. Anyway, so I also recall instances of, for example, when load shedding first started. Load shedding, for international listeners, is rolling blackouts for us, where the government or the power utility supplier. Remember, we've only got one major power supplier, that is Eskom, yeah. And then they've got subsidiaries that manage it or sell it later on the line or whatever, like City Power and things. Eskom literally turns off your power for a few hours every day during different slots of the day, as needed, in order to prevent a total collapse of the grid. So I remember when that first started as a kid, and I used to think back then, and this was years ago, and I was like, oh, this is cool because, we get to light candles and sit in the dark house, and, you're a kid, you're an idiot, essentially. Now I look at it and I go, like, okay, I'll be honest, right now, for the last couple months, we have not experienced any bad form of rolling blackouts, because I don't know what they've done. They're either burning a metric ton of diesel each day, or they've done something to get things, stable again. Not forgetting that a lot of South Africans have moved to solar power, so they are off grid. But anyway, so as a kid, I thought, man, this is really cool. But now, when we have rolling blackouts, it's like, okay, boys, let's phone everybody, let's gear up, let's jump in the vehicles, and let's go on patrol, because now we have to hunt copper cable thieves. Because when the lights are out, they can just dig that cable out the ground, and off he goes without having to worry about getting zapped to an absolute crisp. So then became the rolling blackouts. Then we started going through years of, okay, things are fine, it is what it is. And then it became years of, hang on a second, more and more people are starting to talk about how bad things are and about what's going on. And I remember, as a young teenager now, overhearing a conversation of somebody who was discussing, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something to do with how much a house cost compared to what it used to. And they were like, yeah, it's not great. And then my teenage-ish years entered. A new president came along, Jacob Zuma, and he was supposed to be great and fix things and so forth, which he did in a lot of cases. We don't want to just make everything look bad. He did do a lot for the country, but then became wasted years, because then corruption, a lot of corruption, I mean, it was always there regardless of what president it was, but it then started becoming so entrenched, that we are now at a stage where almost, I think, I might even go out on a limb and say basically every single government serving entity is either bankrupt or completely dysfunctional, to a point where it is only operational because the government has to keep sending money its way. I mean, you could take the South African Post Office, for example. There is nothing left of it. There is absolutely nothing left of the South African Post Office. I will actually go and record some footage and post it. There are South African post offices that I can climb into the freaking post office at night and find the homeless sleeping inside, where they have set fires inside to stay warm and strip the infrastructure completely out on the interior. Uh, there was, for example, the main post office. We're going far West Rand now towards like a place called Roodepoort CBD. There was a post office there. There's now not a post office there anymore. The whole thing's gone all the way down to the foundations. I mean, they stole the bricks out the walls. So, this is a sign of complete lack of government oversight. And whilst I said it's great for some of us, in terms of general functionality, things start falling apart. So yeah, kind of went through that with the teenage-ish years. And then I remember the family home getting broken into. My mom fought off an attacker, and she actually did quite well. The guy got beaten so bad that by the time Pops got home, he was like a twitching mess, essentially,
Oh,
on
wow.
the floor. And then the next home that we moved into, I remember the family buying, having burglar bars installed, security gates installed, barbed wire put up, the whole 9 yards essentially. And things just sort of started degrading the more and more time went on. And people, I suppose, only noticed it because the news started reporting on it. The news started saying the infrastructure is looking bad, it's getting worse, etc., because it becomes accepted, right? People talk about it and they're like, okay, things are really bad. And then it's like, well, now what? And well, we just keep going on with our lives. And now we're at the point where I'm talking to you and my home, and I'm not unique in this. There are hundreds of millions of homes just like this in South Africa where I have security gates, proper security gates. You will not get those out the wall. They've been raw bolted in with chemical anchors backing it as well. And it is not just tubular steel, it is solid steel. You can pull that out if you hook up a crane and you literally pull it out the wall, for example, that locks in three places, top, middle, and bottom. And it's fire grade reinforced hinges. So you can crowbar as much as you want. You're going nowhere. There is then a security gate in the passage. I know some people call it a hallway or whatever, leading to the main bedroom. Every window has burglar bars that again have been raw bolted and chemically anchored into the wall face itself. And then the main master bedroom is the most reinforced, if you want to call it that. The brick wall has been built up inside the roofing section, so you can't just crawl through the roof from one side to the other. And the burglar bars on that side have got a special release mechanism that I don't want to say it was patented by someone, but it was a thing that someone invented that you can only access from the inside. So I can, if needed, open the burglar bars on that side if I had to get family out. If there's a fire or something, you don't want to be stuck in here while there's a fire or whatever. And then we've obviously got CCTV all around that notifies me when there's movement. We've got beams, those beams that you cross, and the alarm is triggered. Each one has its own zone, so I know exactly who is where and what they're doing. And then on top of the walls, like I say, barbed wire, electric fencing, and so forth. So, oh yes, and of course the gates have got anti-lift brackets because they like to lift up the sliding gates of homes, and then they rock it on the rails to get the gate open. Uh, and yeah, that is now how every South African who can do so, who can afford to do so, is now living. We've got massive walls around all our properties. Most people have a between 5 to 6 to sometimes 8 foot walls. I've seen 10 foot, 12 foot walls. Yeah, everyone's got private security on call if needed because there is no visible policing. So if the shit hits the fan, you have to contact your private security, who's going to get there within 2 minutes. And with them, they can bring medical, fire, the whole 9 yards for whatever you may need. And yeah, obviously, those who can, they're armed. We don't want to look like cowboys, so we're just going to say we're armed within South African, laws and regulations, and we're not living in fear. So, that is something I've always wanted to make clear. It's not a matter of living in fear. It's a matter of I see what goes on out there. I know what goes on out there. In fact, I respond to what goes out there by putting my own life on the line and the line of members, the lives of members who are in my team. And that is not something that you want to happen to your family while you're out there. So anyone who tries to get in here, it's going to take them a good hour. And within 5 minutes, I'll be here anyway, pretty much teabagging that guy in the garden. But we won't say that too loud, PG. But yeah, so that is the unfortunate route that everything has gone, where South Africans do not have the luxury of living in a home that doesn't have walls. We can start with that. That doesn't have walls. I think at this stage, people have installed everything except a moat, a literal moat. But then again, there is a moat, actually. There is a trench, a 2 meter wide by 2 meter deep trench that's been dug. It's about under, I think, 400, 500 meters long. They dug it out on a piece of land towards Pretoria to stop land invasions. That worked. But so, yeah, that is the unfortunate case. The extension of childhood started off great. We're lighting candles in home during rolling blackouts because it was fun as a kid. And now crime is so bad that you got to be careful driving at night because you don't know if your vehicle is going to get spiked, and then you're going to get jumped by 4 armed dudes who are going to execute you for a cell phone.
And it's so interesting to me, again, talking about some of the criticism that you receive on X, because I've seen, in some of the comments and in some of your responses to some of the comments, where somebody again, it's the internet, right?
I love it.
Yeah, you love it, right? And it's got some spicy young little trolls on there. But I've seen on a couple of instances, people calling you a racist, right? Calling you out, saying that this is that, and so on and so forth. And I'm just looking at it and I'm thinking, okay, well, first of all, you're not actually attacking anything he said. You're making some inference. It's some
broad statement
based on supposition, based on hearsay, whereby, look, yeah, you're calling it like it is. There's an incident. The suspects might have been a certain ethnicity. What are you supposed to say, right? Or how else are you supposed to depict certain situations other than what you see with your own eyes?
Absolutely. And I try to remind people that I post about everything and anything regarding, crime in general or security matters in South Africa. And I post about white people, I post about Indian people, colored people, black people, etc.
I haven't seen
Now,
Chinese comments though.
yes, that's true, because I don't,
Chinese suspects.
not to piss anyone off, but I don't really deal in the takedown of the rhino horn trade, guys.
Oh, yeah. Full on.
So,
That's
yeah.
full on. Wow.
Not to take a deep jab at anybody. I'm just saying, if we want to generalize,
that is
but
an organized operation, I would suspect.
With the comments, you'll notice I just sort of share the comment now with the screen grab in case they want to delete it, because they often delete it. And I ask people, well, point it out, show me. And if I'm wrong, I will go on video if I have to and say, look, shit, I'm sorry. Maybe I didn't see it that way or whatever. But so far, no one's been able to do anything. They all just ignore it. Not a single one has, returned and said, look, this is what you posted and this is racist. It's like, okay, whatever. What they don't see behind the scenes, these are not things that I would post or talk about in general, but I do, enjoy being on your show and whatever. So just recently, I had an American and a Canadian here who came to view South Africa to see what's happening, where it's happening, and etc. And we took them on a Zama Zama raid, which was really, really awesome. Not so much for them, especially the poor cameraman. The poor guy thought this was it, start sending the love letters home. But what people didn't understand, and this is one of the interesting things, the team protecting them, and obviously myself, even though I was making sure they were okay, they were all black guys, all heavily armed, well trained, and fearless. I mean, those guys didn't give a shit. You can see they know what they're doing. They deal with this on a daily basis. They are pros at what they do, and what they do is fighting zamas. Um, they kept us safe. We got into an attempted ambush situation where we were clearing rocks out of the road, three or two or three lines of
I
rocks.
saw that. Yeah.
There's
Wow.
footage, yeah, clearing
You
rocks out of the
busted up
road.
your hand.
Yeah. Well, exactly that. And I mean, I shared a liter bottle of water with the four guys in my bakkie who were all black. We all drank from the same bottle. But you're not going to see me go and post about that because, then X is going to be like, oh, yeah, but just because you did that doesn't mean you're not a racist. I mean, I do not care anymore. I mean, in the beginning, I used to like, I would get a message and someone would be like, yeah, K9's a hardcore racist. And I'd be like, oh shit, what are they going to think?
Yeah.
And then a good friend took me one side and was like, dude, who cares?
Yeah.
Not that you are, but I mean, who gives a shit what people say
Yeah.
at the end of the day, So yeah, they kind of missed that side of things. I mean, that same thing, you'll see the Canadian American who are posing next to that fire team. I mean, absolutely brilliant guys. And because of their line of work, we had to blur their faces, right? And then the idiots pop up and they go, but oh, okay, so we're only blurring the black guys' faces now. And I was like, guys, please, I look at some of the stuff and I just like I actually haven't posted on X in a few days, if you haven't noticed, because I just look at it all and I'm like, why do I even bother with some people? But yeah, I can't just leave it either. I got to show what's going on. But sometimes you got to just take a break, It's like people need
Wow.
help.
So in a typical team, that you go out on patrol with, right? Like, give us a sense of what the typical background of the guys are. I mean, is this partially volunteer? Is it a mix of pro and volunteer? How does it tend to, and what are the background of some of the operators that you work with?
Okay, so it depends. Now, there are patrols or operations or takedowns or whatever where I will go out with local actual law enforcement, LEOs, guys who are actual police officers, or other particular task force members we won't mention. But there's that side of it. Then there's you roll with the private security side or you go with the volunteer side. So on the volunteer side, everyone has a normal job, volunteering. Everyone has a normal job. Some of them are salesmen, some of them are welders. We don't have teachers, unfortunately. We do have a zoologist and a vet, of all things. And well, we've got a firing range instructor as well, and a bunch of others. Everyone's got a day job. It's the volunteers that always, never seem to amaze me because they are sometimes the ones who really go out of their way to try and help.
Wow.
And these are guys who are putting their lives on the line at no charge, no cost. There's zero remuneration. It's their own money, their own finances, their own equipment, their own fuel, their own vehicle, all of it. It's all them. So I am part of a few volunteer organizations. I'm not allowed to talk about them, but I'm also, I assist private security on operations and whatever they're doing. That's just how it is. You do that as part of the volunteer thing. And then you can assist SAPs and stuff like that. So the average public doesn't know, but you are manpower at the end of the day. If you are capable, you can join a police operation underneath whatever organization you want to
Mm.
be a part of. It can be anything from a CPF, which is a community policing forum. It can be a CPF. It could be a community safety initiative that's not a CPF. It could just be a block watch, the guys that look after their little block. It could even be as like part of a farm watch, a Plaasvach. Some places still have farm watches that are active, etc., or any other community safety organization. No police department that I have come across in the years of doing this has ever turned anyone away that I know of that has volunteered manpower, time, money, gear, whatever, towards an operation. And as long as you just behave yourself, they'll take you. It's that simple. But, you know, with that being said, you can now see how I don't want to say desperate things are, but just how far things have come where we have to supplement manpower, let's call it that way, to assist where needed.
So when you have a situation with a very weak state, what does that mean for the rules of engagement?
As per, I suppose, what any other country would be, generally here, the rules of engagement, just in general, and I suppose it actually covers everything from law enforcement to the average civilian, is one, the threat needs to be imminent or active. The threat needs to be deadly, where there's a loss of life that could be incurred, and the threat needs to be illegal, basically. You cover those three, i.e., the guy standing in front of you pulls a firearm and points it at a bunch of people. He's a bad guy. He's going to shoot someone. Well, sorry for him. He's going 6 feet under as per South African law because you must stop the threat. You must meet it with an equal amount of force at the end of the day. That being said, don't mag dump the guy because then you're probably going to jail. But stop the threat. So that is the general rules of engagement. You speak about rules of engagement. That changed during the July riots of 2021. So now the July riots of 2021 was every man, woman, and child for themselves in a lot of neighborhoods. Some neighborhoods pulled together. Some people started setting up roadblocks and trying to curb the literal hordes that were just swarming everywhere. And others just were sitting in their houses opening fire essentially on everything that walked past. And I don't blame them because some of the hordes started targeting private homes. They were petrol bombing houses. They were pulling families out of houses.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they were stealing things. People were losing their lives, uh, etc. And I mean, the looting was so bad that there was traffic, right? There was traffic buildup for kilometers and kilometers and kilometers. And in some places, the local police force was just walking down the rows of cars. And if there was no one in the car, they were just, stabbing the tires so that the looters could not get away. It was really bad. And I mean, during that time, I was one of those who was out there in the field trying to keep the hordes at bay. I mean, I was there when Alexander Mall fell. I was there when Pan Africa Mall fell. Funny story, Pan Africa Mall is again, it was in Alexander Township. Well, still is. It's in Alexander Township. It was built for the people of Alexander Township to say, yeah, you go, we'll support your infrastructure. We're going to give you a mall. It's going to give you jobs. It's going to give you a place to go. We're going to try our best to uplift you out of this, whatever situation this is. And they looted it to the freaking ground. I mean, they cleaned it out. I was there when they attacked Bambanani Mall, which is towards Diepsloot or whatever side, and etc. So it was heavy, and they actually started targeting low-hanging fruit. So the malls that were the closest were hit first, and then a few weeks later they were like, "Oh shit, we don't have jobs because we kind of wrecked all of this stuff." But the rules of engagement then were essentially, here's a shotgun, here's 12 gauge rubber rounds. If it's running around out there, send some rubber its way so that it, excuse the listeners here, but fucks off back to where it came from. Because that is how it just, that's how it was. And it ended up on that stage, especially I think around day 3 or day 4 up here in Johannesburg, because the rioters and looters started using live ammunition and they were targeting us, first responders. And a prime example of that was the SAPS officer in Joburg CBD who got shot through both legs with an AK. And he went down and they couldn't get anyone in to get him out because there was no armored ambulances available. They had to send in an armored Inyala, which is it would be an armored personnel carrier, to the people listening, and they had to pull him out, extract him with that. So it was bad. I mean, again, rules of engagement. We had helicopters landing and offloading crowd control munitions because the teams were burning through the stuff so quickly up in Johannesburg. And eventually it got to a stage where the rule of engagement changed and they said, fuck it, we're going to keep them inside the townships. We're not going to let them out. We're going to hold them in there. They can then loot and destroy and burn whatever they want inside their own township, and we'll deal with the whatever the outcome later. And that's what they did. They started unrolling barbed wire across, several streets and main roads and etc. And it just became crowd control where, like cattle, you keep them in one spot. So your rule of engagement will always change depending on the scenario. I mean, for example, you pull up on a CIT incident that's going down. You see a bunch of dudes standing with rifles and balaclavas. You're going to shoot that guy before they, start taking notice of you. Otherwise, you're going to have a very bad day in a hurry. And with that being said, in most cases, you do not actually, how would I put it this way? You don't race to a CIT scene, primarily because you then raise the level of engagement, which is not always good because those guys shoot at everything and anyone, and they do shoot at random people in their cars just because they can. So they tend to try and take the CIT guys down as part of that rule of engagement when they're at the property that they tend to split the money, or if they can split a vehicle off that's being pursued, they'll try and take that vehicle down. But they don't usually try and stop them at the CIT scene because then it gets interesting in a hurry for everybody.
Well, I mentioned rules of engagement because I think to outside listeners, one of the sort of instances in popular culture that they would know would be the Oscar Pistorius Riva Steenkamp case, which I think many people, even sort of passively following that case, would be aware of what was a defense that just didn't seem to add up, right? To outside ears, where he was basically saying, well, there was an intruder, so I just lit up the bathroom. But to somebody who maybe is living in a much more reduced threat environment, that just sounds absolutely bonkers, right? Because the rules of engagement that we would be used to would be that only if you've double and triple checked that that room is clear would you ever have any grounds to do anything, much less fire a basically mag dump into the next door room.
Now, it's a case of trying to maintain stress levels as well. We see that a lot as first responders, where guys get trigger happy because one, it's a lot of it is a lack of training. Two, it's a case of adrenaline through the roof. And three, it's just real life experience. A lot of people have not experienced getting shot at, having to return fire, losing people next to you because they got shot, or yourself being shot, whatever the case may be. Now, in his instant, in Oscar's case, there's no way you could justify ever in a court of law that you live in a high-end security estate or just a house that is really well fortified, and the bad guy breaks into your house and then goes and locks himself in the bathroom,
Right.
and then you just blow him away through the door. I
That
mean,
didn't make any
no,
sense to, I
you
think,
know,
most outside ears.
absolutely. I had this discussion with people before, and the general consensus was, speaking for us, maybe it's a bit different because of the training and the trying to maintain a level head during scenarios. The simplest matter is always hold them where they are and phone the police. Let the police come and deal with it. As far as I'm concerned, he's in the house. If it is an intruder, it is in the house, okay, but he hasn't yet gotten through uh, the security gate that's always locked in the passage. Okay, that security gate that you would literally need CIT explosives to remove it off the wall. Um, and because of the way it's angled, he cannot lean in and out to fire around the corner, etc. And whatever. Now, he's a threat, yes. Is he a deadly threat? If he's armed with a firearm, yes, he's a deadly threat. But if he keeps coming back to check the gate and his friends are taking the TV and a bunch of other stuff, um, I would think twice about shooting him through that gate because I don't know what the outcome is going to be with regards to South African law. Sometimes, yes, you shot a guy with a handgun that was in your house. Yes, you were behind a locked gate, but he was a threat to your life and your families, and so you dealt with it.
Yeah.
Other times, it's like the guy couldn't get to you. So now what? Now you've got an extended court battle. And that is the case of Oscar, where I mean, it's so sad what he did. I mean, that was a pure rage. Let's be honest. That was just uncontrolled emotions. And the sad thing is, the first thing he did was reach for his firearm and put the bullets through the door. And I'm sure when that last brass case hit the floor, his mind must have immediately realized what he had done, and there was just no going back from that. But yeah, the rule of engagement is always, like I said, it must be an attack that is ongoing, it must be illegal, and it must be an immediate threat to life in order for you to respond in kind. And please, people listening to this in South Africa, don't shoot the guy in the back if he's running away, because then that's thanks for coming, have a nice day. No longer, you're no longer going to be an owner of a firearm. Um, Look, if he's running away and he's running away with a rifle or something, and you're maybe 10 feet from him, sure, I'm sure you could get away with that in court. He's a threat. He opened fire
Yeah.
inside the house or whatever the case may be, and now he's hauling ass away. No, he's a threat to the public. I'm gonna take the shot there. Yes, I'm sure you could get away with it. As long as you showed reasonable means of then approaching the suspect, kicking the rifle away, and not executing him on the ground. Please do stop the threat. Don't,
Yeah.
yeah, as much as we all want to do that, unfortunately, unless he's still got that rifle and he turns around and he's hitting the back and he still opens fire on you, then by all means, that's his thanks for coming, goodbye. But yeah, the rule of engagement, unfortunately, it does favor the bad guy. That's just how it is. But if people were to really think about it, it doesn't actually favor the bad guy that much, because in any scenario, you should not just actually open fire on, I don't know, call it a suspect or someone that you assume to be a bad guy, etc., without, making sure. And then obviously we're talking about this, is quite easy to talk about it, but knowing that these instances take place in split seconds, I mean, it's immediate decision that you have to make. You must know where your bullet's going to end up, for example. You must know that you are comfortable engaging at that distance. You can't take a shot at a guy 50 meters away with your handgun if you haven't trained for it, because where are the bystanders? Where's the round going to end? Also, what is he going to return fire with if you miss? If he turns around with the rifle and starts engaging you and you don't have hard cover, yeah, sorry, but that's not happening. So, yeah, your rule of engagement is unfortunate, but it's good for you too, because it keeps you out of jail. Let's put it that way.
So what's your preferred sidearm?
Okay. So I've always owned Glock throughout the entirety of just a normal shooter, etc., that enjoys sports shooting. Let's just correct that. Person who enjoys sports shooting.
Hmm.
Glock has always been my favorite, primarily because I've had them run through mud, dirt, water,
Hmm.
the whole 9 yards. I've never had one fail on me. Yes, you do get a jam, maybe like 2 or 3 jams every 2,000 rounds of ammo or whatever, but I've never had one jam under a stressful situation. Um, and remember, we train with them, we train hard, we train through building clearance, vehicle work, vehicle maneuver, uh, able body recovery, medic under fire, etc. And you burn through ammunition, and I'm yet to have my Glock 19 under those circumstances uh, fail to fire, cycle a new round, etc. And carry on. I do run a red dot on mine. I run an Acro C2. I love that dot. It's an enclosed emitter, so I don't have to worry about mud and dirt and all sorts of things getting in there. And there's nothing fancy on that. The only thing I do is I throw in a minus connector, so that helps your trigger pull become a bit lighter. And everything else is stock standard. I never change anything else. All Glock parts, no extended magazines. And yeah, that's that.
And the Glock 19 is a 9?
It is a 9mm double stack, yes. Yeah, and it's a tough gun. There's a lot of YouTube channels where they show you how much stress they put through that firearm,
Hmm.
and it just keeps going. Just keeps going and going and going. So granted, they don't come out the box with the best triggers, unfortunately. It's the
Hmm.
one thing I do not like about them. But once you put like a few thousand rounds through it, it's happy, it keeps going. And I know I can pull mine if I had to use it in a self-defense situation, and reliably know that when I pull the trigger, it's going to go bang.
Yeah. We first connected on the subject of mental wellness, in the midst of chaos. And it's not, I guess there's two types of stress, right? There's the acute stress, right? Like sort of we're under fire, we're taking, casualties, sort of hyper concentrated stress, right? once you flick that fight or flight a switch, and you've decided to fight, and it's on, right? And the adrenaline pumping and so on, right? But then I'm actually more interested in the dull, constant stress, right? The stress that yourself, your colleagues, just fellow citizens in the townships that you reside with, your coworkers, just people in this environment where, again, you have this pseudo state collapse, right? You've got a private sector that's now trying to fill these gaps and make the situation work, and it's going through. But mentally, what does that do to you, having to deal with that load day in and day out? You can't, it's like picking your kids up from school. It's like, I can't just go do a beeline and grab the kid and do this. I gotta, I'm looking over my shoulder, I'm doing this, I've got to do a situational awareness, recce almost, just before I do something that most people take for granted.
So I could tell you that I don't want to take a broad scope on the populace, but the average South African tends to ignore. So the average South African tends to look at the situation and go, I'm more worried about the load shedding that's going to happen tonight than getting hijacked on the way home, etc. I think the average South African will more likely experience, for example, like a violent home invasion than they would necessarily a hijacking. But for me, look, I don't want to say that, we are SEAL Team 6 here and running around doing our thing and that you're permanently on guard, because it's impossible. You can never be permanently situationally aware. There are other guys out here who can give a much better explanation than me, but the general long and short of it, for my personal use sake, would be, we'll start at the beginning. We'll go with acute stress, immediate, in the zone, etc. For me, it's about your training at the end of the day. You have to have something to fall back on. Because if you hesitate, and let's say, for example, you are changing magazines and you hesitate, and for some reason you put that magazine in backwards, or you try to get the magazine into the magwell and you keep missing because you're not focusing. That is a lack of training. That is just a lack of, good training can overcome stress and emotions and whatever, because you need something that you do constantly and consistently that you can just fall back on over and over and over again. So that is your training. It helps manage stress in the moment. After the fact, though, I mean, you talk about the long-term effects and how to deal with it and what it's like. It's actually a really good question. It's not one that I would be honest with you that I necessarily know how to answer myself, but I think what I can say is that I don't necessarily think about these things when I get home. It's not something I want to bring into my household, that we arrived on a scene and, 6 dudes were shot dead or whatever the case may be, and blah, blah, blah. You kind of get used to it. You see death and it's like, well, okay, he's gone, all right. Follow the processes. SAPS is on scene. SAPS, South African Police Service, SAPS, will take control of the scene, and they will process it. And if you can assist, you assist. Some teams have trauma counselors on hand where they offer trauma counseling to the affected, either team member or member of the public. Maybe it's a wife who lost a husband or whatever the case may be. So the long-term stress implications for me personally, I don't want to say I'm a hero and that it doesn't affect me and whatever, because yes, of course, it affects everyone. But the long term, I'll be honest with you, I do not think about it. I think I come home. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to be home. And I just get ready for the next day. It is what it is. I mean, I have personally been in many situations where there's been an exchange of gunfire from all parties, not just both, but we've had instances where guys in hijacked vehicles have opened fire on us. You return fire. Then a member of the public who doesn't know what's going on and thinks he's going to be John Wick opens fire on the guys in the hijacked vehicle. They also think now this is it. And you've got an exchange of gunfire going 3 ways. Not that you're shooting at the civilian or whatever, but or other cases where you pull up on a scene and it's an active home invasion. And it turns out, oh shit, that scene is still hot. The guys are still in the house. They've seen you. They're engaging. They're shooting at you. etc. And it's just, again, you just keep falling back on your training. But I can explain, what the stress feels like, or typically where it starts is you approach a scene and you are, let's call it, aware. Okay, you are aware of your surroundings. You're taking note. All right, and it's the weirdest thing because you start noticing things here and there. You notice uh, there are footprints leading to a part of the property, or there's disturbed brush or bush or something, or uh, whatever. You just start noticing things, okay, sight-wise. You then might get a smell, like something smells odd, doesn't doesn't match what you thought you would be smelling. Like blood, human blood, for example. It's a wet, iron, sticky sort of smell, if you get enough of it out. And then you start approaching with a little bit more caution because now something, it's like a gut feeling, something doesn't add up. Then you start hearing things. You start hearing people talking inside. You start hearing them moving around. You might even hear a guy rack a slide because he feels this is, and then it's always that first shot that goes off where, okay, the first shot goes off, everyone, uh, I don't want to say dives for cover because that's not necessarily most people's first instinct. Most people's first instinct, apart from diving to cover, would be to turn and face the threat to see where it's coming from initially, and then to draw your own firearm and to get it in the ready for, the possible firefight or whatever. So it starts to peak. Your feelings, your emotions, etc. It starts to peak, and you start feeling um, the adrenaline starts pumping. You might start sweating. Not every guy starts sweating. You might grip your handgun with more force than what is usually required, etc. And yeah, I won't go down the road of like the movies where you get like heightened senses and you get tunnel vision and all these things. But yes, the stress does climb. But in most cases, if you come out okay, a lot of guys are just like, you know what, it's fine. I'm okay. I'm good. I'm going to be all right. It's a different story if you lose a teammate, though.
Mm.
I have not yet been on that, thankfully, but I have seen instances where other teams have lost teammates, and it's a heavy, heavy thing to watch. The guys, you'll see what you thought was the toughest of men, he breaks down. He is now done. He's going to call it for the next few days. Usually it's until they get their buddy's funeral sorted and everything. That is a heavy scenario. But even him, he will still then return to work, return to his line of duty, and they will carry on. So I don't want to say we're heroes here in South Africa or whatever, but I think the way we manage stress is just to be on a general understanding that it is what it is. And because there's no one in my house right now, I'm okay. If that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. I can empathize with that. I I have a bit of difficulty though understanding how, like, if we looked at it like at three levels: tactical, operational, strategic. Like, no one really seems to have your back, like at the strategic level, like top cover wise, like a lot of people in your line of work, you're doing it in this tactical level and doing it with success and with a high level of pride. But it's interesting to me, it's hard for me to understand how you keep going when, just like on X, you have so many haters. It's haters in terms of people who, it's like, okay, well, I guess because you're white, maybe, right? That somehow you're still a beneficiary of a level of privilege, and that therefore, really, yeah, kind of, you made your bed now, like deal with it.
Right. So how we carry on, Jace, I wish I could answer that in a meaningful manner. Because sometimes I ask myself, and it's just an honest thing, why am I going out tonight? Why am I doing this? And nothing comes to mind other than it's kind of what you end up doing. Um, Someone tried to call it out as something called volunteerism, where I had to go look it up, and it's a whole lot of whatever about a mental thing where you just have to volunteer for everything and freaking anything or whatever the case may be. And the one other dude said something about it's just because you want to show off or show people what you're doing. And I mean, I don't even post 90% of what happens on patrols and what is done and so forth. I do like helping people if at all possible, but I've seen what it looks and feels like to be vulnerable. I know the feeling, and it's not something I want people to go through. I think a lot of it is also it's at a point where you develop solid relationships with these guys that you are going out with. Okay, these are guys that you learn to trust. They learn to trust you. You train with them. You all operate alongside one another. And again, I'm not saying we are Rangers, SEAL Team 6, whatever. But you learn who these guys are, their families. You train alongside them. They become your brothers essentially at the end of the day. And a lot of it is now a case of he's going out, and I got to make sure that he's going to be okay as well. I got to get him back home to his family, just like he's going to do for me. It's just a repeat. It's a repeat cycle of that, basically, where you're making sure that your team's going to be all right, and you are helping others at the same time. And a lot of the going out is I got to do it because if I don't, no one else is going to do things in my neighborhood to make sure that the neighborhood is okay. I mean, you have to. If your neighborhood starts becoming a hotspot for just call it bad elements regarding criminal activity, if you do not stop that, the police, unfortunately, they're not in a position to do so. Security companies try, but I mean, they also limited on manpower and expenditure. So we volunteer and we help where we can, basically. Bit of a tough one, yeah. Also, it's like a mental thing. Like, why do you actually do it?
I was looking at the demographics, just pulling up Wikipedia, right? Like, if you go back 100 years, whites were 21% of the country, right? Like, I think if you fast forward today, and it's like they have it like every decade, and every decade it basically drops. The percentage, I mean, I think the absolute number is higher, but there have been a lot of people from other parts of the continent, right? Like Zimbabwe, for example, right, is just right next door. You've got I think whites are only like 7 or 8% right now, right? So, I mean, I guess like from a standpoint of Australia, where, like in Sydney here, we have a lot of, like I have quite a few friends who are South African descent. Some came in like waves, like in the 2000s. I think there was a pretty big wave at that point, but you must have friends, you must have family who contemplate leaving, right? Who might say, yeah, do that. And, there was the breaking news just yesterday about, President Trump welcoming, I think it was like, it was like 10 families, right? Like fast track refugee status, right? Like singling them out, which is, interesting. It's beyond the scope of this discussion, right? But I bring that up because I don't want to put you on the spot about that, but I'm just bringing it up because, again, from more of a mental wellness, point of view, right? When you see people leaving or you hear about people leaving, I mean, does that rattle some of your sort of fight or flight response?
So Trump's offer, right, of what do they call it, refugee status, to go and live in the US. I have spoken to people about it. I've spoken to quite a few people, actually someone who's gone through the entirety of the process and looks like they are eligible and are being contacted by US State Departments to finalize things. And they are doing it, a lot of people, because they feel like South Africa's lost. They feel like it's gone. They don't feel safe. They're tired of the stress. They're tired of not knowing when it's going to be their turn, etc. And some of them have just been victims of violent crime as well, and so forth. Now, for someone like myself to watch people like that leaving, um, one, I think it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because you don't want your country to be viewed like that on an international level, whether you like the place or not. That is just how it is. I mean, I don't think you want to see people fleeing Australia. It's not exactly a good look to the rest of the world. Same for us. But in their cases, it is a necessary outcome, which I understand. Because we're talking about the refugee status, a lot of people use the point on the form where you can fill out why. A lot of them say because they are a less than 7% or less than 8% minority living in a country that's got 140 plus race laws targeted at them in order to not benefit them. And then you got the case of the other political side of things where you have the singing of the song Kill the Boer and other instances like that where people just feel like, no, if I get a chance to go, I'm going to go because I just don't feel like this country wants me anymore, essentially, along with a bunch of other things. My personal take on that, I look at it and I contemplated the Trump thing. I'll be honest. I looked at it and I thought, that's actually quite cool. It's like a free ticket to start something new. And I was talking to people about it, and it was just a cool discussion. And the whole time, I kind of realized, somewhere along the line, what would be the point of going there? I mean, the US is amazing, I'm sure, the American dream and all that, but they also have their own problems, right? Just like we've got ours. And I can manage my problems here. I can manage a guy jumping over a wall here, or 10 of them deciding they want to try and expropriate my TV, etc., or whatever. I can deal with that. I'm used to the violence and etc., and I've learned to live around it and to do things. But to ship up and start a whole new life somewhere else, for me, that is more stressful than watching these people leave. It's like, what would you even do when you get there? Where do you start, right? Like, I wouldn't even know. And a lot of people say, yeah, but that's because you're short-sighted or whatever. But no, I love my country. I really, it might not look that way on X because of what I post, but I love it here. I really do. And the lack of government oversight again, it favors me. It favors every single citizen living here, believe it or not. Minus, yes, the 140 race-based laws and whatever, but everything else, I mean, is free game, really.
I think actually, when I look at your X account, I think actually it says the opposite. I think that it says that you love your country enough to care. A lot of people don't meet that threshold. They're sort of whatever. But there's something about. I mean, I remember so vividly in February of 22 talking to people about the Ukraine situation. And it was about to go down. Putin had massed all of those formations right on the border. And it was like, okay, was this just some political diplomatic game that he was playing? Maybe. All of mass media was telling us that was what it was. But it's like, something doesn't look right. And again, if we can use another pop culture reference, if you've seen the movie Crimson Tide, he says, you don't put on a condom unless you're gonna. And it was the same situation there, right? And I'm thinking to myself, just talking to people, I remember back then, they've recanted what they've said, but they're like, okay, if Putin does it, what, your little Ukraine, what are you going to do? They're 5 times your size, whatever, they're going to roll over them. They're going to take Kyiv in 2 weeks. And I'm thinking, fuck that. You stand and you fight. It's your country. You know what I mean? What does that matter? Even if they roll over you, right? Even if your tactical position, whatever military, analysis you want to put on it, at the end of the day, there's something like really fundamental, right? It comes like from your spirit, from something that you can't really put down on paper. It's like that fighting spirit. It's something similar to, in a way, what you were talking about at the beginning of the show, with how some of those heists, the robbers would go consult the necromancer, right? Where it's about
necromancer.
You know what I mean? Right? Like in its own strange way. But I guess there's something about spirit, right? We don't talk about this very much. But I do think that, there's something about it. You can't put your finger on it, but it's like, this is your fate. You're in it. And it's like, you love your country and you're loving it.
I actually really do. And you've got an open invitation one day when you come here. If you come here one day, I'll show you around.
I would love
will
to.
give you
I
the
would love
full
to.
rundown.
You are invited anytime to come visit us at the micro resort. we'd love to host you on the plantation.
Amazing.
I would definitely love to come visit South Africa at some point.
You
I heard the
must.
fishing is very good too.
Yes, you can fish. There's a lot of places where you can do some solid. You can do deep sea. I don't know what you're into. Deep sea, ocean, river, whatever, shoreline, whatever. There's so much that you can do. We don't have like a Bass Pro Shop, unfortunately, but we do have some decent, really good actually fishing spots
Yeah.
around here.
That's for sure. I have to try a bunny too, right? What is that? The curry in a loaf?
A
The
bunny chow, yes,
bunny
yes. It's either a half loaf or a quarter loaf, and it is stacked with a lamb curry essentially. And
sounds
then you get, depending on the type, it's either got like coleslaw on top or something. But yeah, but you need to actually experience a proper South African braai.
a
Is
braai.
is what
Yeah.
yeah, is
For
what you
sure.
need to do.
Lots of meat.
Proper game meat. But let me know one day if you're going to come down here. We'll take you on the operations. We'll show you what it's like to embed yourself with the teams and stuff. Throw you a lekker braai and everything, all of it.
I'd love to do that. I really would love to do that. That let's do that. Let's definitely do that.
Yeah, let me know.
But I consider myself a pretty moderate guy. Just politically speaking, I consider myself, just a centrist. Not because it's sort of I try to be kind of like always mincing my words, trying to do this. It's just sort of I call them like I see them, and I think in the stressful situation that you're in and that your sort of compadres are in, I think it's important for you to hear from the outside world that what you're posting on X sounds totally like, obviously the situation is totally messed up, but in terms of like, if I had to give you a sort of like, reality check, looking at it, it makes sense what you're saying, and it really comes through that you love your country, I think.
Yeah, I mean, look, as we're speaking, it's a beautiful, beautiful sunny day. Winter is starting, technically already started or whatever. Um, it's a beautiful sunny day. I can walk to the shop and get milk and come back and everything. Is there a chance that something's going to happen? Probably not. But that doesn't detract from the fact that there is a lot of uncontrolled violent crime,
Yeah.
more here than in most other places. I'm not saying every place, but most other places in the world. And it's not just crime where they're breaking into your house and they are taking your TV or your phone or your laptop. It's crime where, if I may be so brutally forward, where they are breaking into the house, tying up the family, raping the wife and daughter, shooting the husband on the way out, and then they'll take the TV, sort of thing. And that is what gets to me. And I actually just realized now that answers my question earlier as to why I do it. It's because I don't want it to happen. I think I've just figured it out. Especially in my household, for example. So if I keep those bad elements out and away, it benefits everybody. But yes, it is rough, but it's beautiful. It's fun. You can have a life here. You can have a family here. Really, you can do essentially whatever you wanted to do, but you must just be aware of what is happening and how to avoid not becoming a target. That's essentially what it boils down to.
So, where does South Africa go from here? I mean, because one scenario that probably a lot of people could see is something where you have lots of, Oranias sort of popping up,
Okay.
right? Where
Yeah.
you have, in a sense, like a racial separation, right? Because
Okay.
people are keen to point out differences, and
Yeah.
the social friction between different groups has proven
Yes.
to be difficult. And as you mentioned, some of the 140 race laws. Is that a scenario that you see possible, where basically people just start going into ethnic enclaves and no one sort of intermixing as much?
I will be honest. Yeah, I don't see the ethnic enclave thing, and I'll explain why. If we take Orania as an example, and I'm not the best person to speak about it because there are others who know a lot more about it than me, but in general, Orania is more of a cultural town. Let's put it this way. A cultural town where they have chosen their own demographics to uh, be their own labor and workforce and call it citizens of that little town. Okay. I think we should look at Orania firstly, not so much on racial lines. Yes, on racial lines, yes, because let's be honest, it is an all-white town. There's no getting around that. But first, as a cultural point of view, they prefer their own demographics to do their work because, as the town guys have said, their demographics determine their destiny, etc. So they obviously feel more comfortable with their people doing their work, their safety structures, everything. So yes, from Orania, they're doing their thing. They're doing well, from what I understand. But I do not see more Oranias popping up in South Africa on that level, primarily because it takes a metric shit ton of effort to start something like that.
Yeah.
They essentially popped up in the middle of a little desert. They built their own water system, their own little farms, their own houses. All of it they did essentially themselves. Their own town management system with town planning. All of it is them. What I do see though, and it's important that you added the enclave part, where I do see, with regards to the Orania vibe, more neighborhoods in South Africa trying to essentially decentralize themselves from what's happening around them. And
Mm.
we are actually seeing that as we speak, not on ethnicity or demographics or cultural basis or religious basis, but in regards to two major factors, the decline as a whole and security. So what a lot of smaller neighborhoods have started doing is they start what we call booming themselves off. So they set it up as a little safe zone where it's access control to get in and out of the whole neighborhood as a whole. And the neighborhood all chips in to hire private security to man that gate. So any elements, bad elements that want to get in, they have to go through that road anyway. So now private security can look at them and, it does lessen the chances of violent crime taking place within these little areas. And then what we see alongside the decline part is everyone chipping in to form their own little we call them RAs, residents associations, and the resident association will then help fix potholes, help paint the roads, help trim trees, help just repair and maintain infrastructure as a whole. The resident associations are getting so good at maintaining their neighborhoods that they have direct lines of communication to the guys who come in from the government that do the electrical repairs, the sewage repairs, the water pipe repairs, all these things. And they can just phone them up, get them in to repair what needs to be repaired and have them on their way again. So that is what I think South Africa is going to be heading well, the direction that it's going to be heading in, because as we speak now, it is already happening. It's If you visit one day, I'll take you to a few good ones, and you'll see where people have decided they've had enough of a decline around them, and they essentially separate themselves by booming off their area, creating a safe zone, and then they start maintaining the interior of the safe zone themselves. Where they say, you know what, we're not gonna we're not gonna live in a way that means our roads are getting constantly pummeled. There's massive potholes, the robots are getting smashed over, never replaced. There's violent crime, there's a lot of criminal activity, there's a lot of whatever. They just decide, no, we've had enough. We're gonna boom this off, do our own thing inside there, and we will then be the voice to relevant government officials to get things fixed. And it works. It really, really works. And the best part about it is it's not like what you see in the US where they've got homeowners associations where Karen will give you $1,000 fine for not trimming your front lawn or whatever. Yeah, it's more of a okay, I don't know, Bob can't trim his lawn today because I don't know, he lost his leg or whatever. Let's go trim his lawn for him. Let's go help him out quickly. And that is what we're seeing a lot of, where communities that can are pulling out of the general structures around them and maintaining and doing their own thing. And that is what you're going to see more of in South Africa, where the private industry is just had enough and we start fixing things ourselves at the end of the day. We will not see, I don't think we'll see any more uh, Oranias and things like that. That was private land that they purchased and then turned into their cultural and demographic hub. I don't see that happening again in South Africa. There is another one though. Actually, I lie. They just marched to it recently and all but destroyed the one entrance area with litter and trash. It's called Kleinfontein. They call themselves an Afrikaans heritage, whatever. But again, it is just, white people living there, which is, I don't see anything wrong with that. I'll be honest with you, because you mentioned will we see more of that and stuff? I think if people want to live with themselves, they must go ahead and do it. If black people did it, I wouldn't have a problem. If whites, Indians, coloreds, whoever decided to go and do that, I couldn't give a damn. It doesn't affect me. It doesn't detract anything from my life. Sorry, I got a little bit long-winded there, but no, I don't see us going that route of, call it Oranification. I see us going down the road of, I've had enough, so my neighborhood and I are going to separate, and we're going to start looking after our own infrastructure and security needs.
So that kind of intersects a little bit with some of the themes tied with the sort of prepper subculture, right? I think some of your readership would probably sympathize with, I guess, what would you say? I mean, there's different subcultures in the end of the world as we know it,
Yes,
and
we're all
things
going
like
to die. Yes.
we're all going to die. But I mean,
Yes.
I guess for me, I have this debate with my mom who lives in the States, and we talk about, again, gun control. And again, I mentioned that I'm a pretty moderate guy, but
Okay.
we have some disagreements about this subject, and I tend to think that, look, if you're not ready to fight, you will get disarmed in no time. That's my view. It's not the hardware that's going to make or break you. Now, sure, you are trained and you are ready to switch into warrior mode like that. But for the average civilian, right, it's like basically with zero training, right, and zero sort of like aggression, like you think that you're going to be able to switch into that mode and be able to fight. Like I don't particularly think so. I don't
No,
particularly think so.
you have to have a will to survive at the end of the day. You have to want to live and call it, let's call it what it is. Let's call it, you have to have the will to live at any cost. Not a bad cost to good people,
At any
but a
cost.
bad cost to bad guys at the end of the day. You must have it in you or be willing to perform unspeakable acts of violence only against those who deserve it, if you want to make it at the end of the day. And that is something I've learned through years and years of running around in this country, where, for example, I've seen a guy get shot 12 times, return fire, reload, clear jam with part of his hand shot away, clear jam, return fire, get shot another 2 or 3 times, reload again, return fire again. He was stuck in a vehicle, just give you an idea of why he keeps getting shot. And essentially just eliminate 3 other guys who were trying to kill him. It's actually a well-known story. It was an anti-poaching case on a game farm, and he just decided somewhere inside of him, well, I'm not dying today. And he took all 3 of them out, and they airlifted him, and he actually made it. Uh, Unbelievable. Um, so yeah, sometimes it's just got to be something inside you, even if you don't have training, fine, let's write training off the list. You just have to kind of want to not die, right? At the end of the day. And for me, that's also a big factor when we go out and do what we do sometimes. Yeah, sometimes it can get scary and things like that, and sometimes things can get a bit close, as it does for any team out there, whether law enforcement, volunteer, community safety, whatever. But you must have it in you to be mentally prepared to not want to die. Let's call it that. So yeah, I do not think the average South African, unfortunately, has that in them. Um, but that's just because our country as a whole tends to look at things and just go, well, it'll never happen to me, or they'd rather just watch all those videos on X with people getting caught in hijackings and shootouts. And when you'll see in South Africa, when the bullets start flying, the crowds come from fuck knows where, to be honest, and they start swarming the area to watch the bullets flying. There's like no will to survive. I don't know about you, but if the rounds started flying, I'm grabbing myself, my loved ones, and I'm getting out of Dodge. Unless I have to, unless I cannot and I'm forced to return fire, I'm out of there. I'm not hanging around to record videos and see how things are going. Bugger that. But that's the South African mindset. So, no, unfortunately, the South African population just doesn't have it in them.
Mm. Yeah, because I bring up the prepper thing just because it's sort of the, like, I think that balance between the hardware and the software, the balance between doing all the checks and the sort of like accounting side, right? The sort of bookkeeping side of preparations with the mental preparedness. And frankly, also the social preparedness. I think people also under talk about that side of it. Like if you talk about all of the enclaves, right, where it's not ethnic enclave, but it could be an enclave where they sort of decentralize themselves to a failing
Yes.
state.
Yes.
Like at the end of the day, that's basically just people probably with nothing in common other than the fact that they want to survive, getting together and saying, listen, let's just chip in for eyes on the street, right? Let's do basically a more advanced community watch and let's take it seriously, right? But to me, that what's not interesting is the hardware. What's interesting is the social connection, that how humans get together and they say, okay, enough is enough. Tom, Dick, and Harry down the street, I don't really particularly like you. I think your hobbies suck. I think your music sucks. But you know what? We're going to get together and watch the street together.
Yes. I like the way you've worded this because you cannot do it alone. You just cannot. And another good example of that is the July riots of 2021, where many communities figured out in the early on stages of it, or the very beginning, that listen, guys, we got to pull together, we got to do something because our neighborhood's next. That other neighborhood just got completely overrun. It's like World War Z down there. We need to like do something here. And a lot of them got together. They started creating WhatsApp groups and planning and organizing street patrols and setting up literal roadblock style things that you would see in like places like Somalia or Rwanda or something. It's like oil barrels across the road to stop cars and things. And they started just securing the neighborhoods together because you can't do it alone. Leaning on the prepper vibe, it's the same thing. Yeah, you can stack food for 5 years, 10 years, or
Exactly.
whatever the
Yeah,
case is going to be. But eventually you're going to need manpower. You're going to need capable manpower.
exactly.
And that's how it is. Yeah.
I think it's your ability to compromise, to have, listen, there's times you're going to have to, maybe extend your moral boundaries, right? And maybe have to tell some white lies or, to protect a loved one or to, again, I think in conflict zones, you see the worst in people, but frankly, you for sure, I mean, we know this through human history. You also see the best in people too. People do
Absolutely.
inexplicable things of acts of kindness and generosity. And the thing that gets me when you talk to people about the firearms, right? And I know you have a lot of gear oriented listeners, right? But I think to me, the gear is, yeah, it's necessary, but it's like packing your school bag. I mean, I personally think that you should look at it as like your pencils and erasers and your scientific calculator. I mean, these are things to get the job done, but the magic is not it's their basic building blocks of equipment that we need. It's not something to be fetishized.
Yes. So gear wise, I usually carry the Glock 19, 3 magazines, my Leatherman, wound packing gauze, a softy wide tourniquet. I prefer those over the traditional cat style, and a little torch. And another item that I see a lot of people don't talk about, this is just leaning on the prepper thing, a pack of cigarettes. I don't even smoke, but I have a pack of cigarettes on me.
Wow.
There is nothing you cannot get done without a cigarette. I'm telling
Wow.
you, if a guy smokes and you have a quality pack of cigarettes on you, don't go buy the cheap stuff. You can spend a little bit of money on an expensive pack and stick it in your pocket. You can get a lot done. I mean,
Wow.
even if you were to talk to someone, If someone you meet for the first time and they're smoking, you can take out a cigarette and put it in your mouth and light it. You don't have to, you can use it as a cigar if you had to style, I don't know, breathing it in or whatever. It just cuts the ice really, really, really well with people. I have gotten or made a lot of contacts, especially in law enforcement and private security companies, just by noticing the one guy smoking. And you're like, "Ah, cool, yeah, I'm gonna go crack one up with him. I don't smoke." Um, and now all of a sudden you're making friends and you've got
Yeah.
decent, solid quality contacts that you can use. So yeah, that is my loadout on average, gear wise.
That is really an interesting thing about the cigarettes, because again, it's there must be moments where it's like, yeah, you're either gearing up, for something about to go down, and that's like people might drop their guard, you have a bit of calm before the storm, or you're recovering from an intense night out, and people want to unload a little bit, having that cigarette break,
Yeah.
might be a really opportune time to connect with someone.
Oh, absolutely. And you see a lot of guys in this industry, they smoke. And I suppose that, like we mentioned earlier, that's actually a stress management tool for them is a cigarette. They smoke. A lot of guys do a lot of smoking in this line of work. I don't smoke. I don't drink. I don't do any form of narcotic or opioid use or whatever. But a lot of dudes, they smoke as just a thing, and they'll all tell you it becomes a habit. And I mean, I've seen a guy light up a cigarette during a firefight. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I mean, you know, is now the time? It's like, but hey, if that helps him manage stress, then go for it.
Yeah. I could see if it was chewing tobacco and it was already loaded up, then that's one
Right.
thing. But it's hard.
Homie took a pack of cigarettes out of his pocket, even did, that they do the tap thing to get the cigarette out, and then put it in his mouth, and off he went, man, doing his little
Wow.
shootout. Yep.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, you know what, K9, just keep doing what you're doing, mate. Really. Think of it as a public service. You're on the ground. If all you do is just report as a citizen journalist what you see with your own two eyes, you add a little bit of your editorial, which is good. That keeps it interesting. It keeps it yours. But you're like a eyewitness, and we need guys like you. So thank you for that.
On that note, I thank you as well for having me on. I just also want to add, like I usually do, is everyone must just remember I'm not alone in this. The only difference between me and a lot of the others is that I'm lucky enough to have X as a platform where people notice it and stuff like that. But yeah, community safety as a whole is what I do. It's what I enjoy. It's what I love. There are a lot of guys out there that love it just as much as I do. And there are guys out there who've sacrificed a lot more for it than what I have. But yeah, it is appreciated. I appreciate your words. Thank you.
For sure. So until we meet either in South Africa or you come to Vanilla Club in Queensland and come visit the plantation.
Yeah, 100%. And as I say, if you come down here one day, let me know. We'll organize a fun run for you so you can see what everything is like.
Yeah, but let me just also say, I just want to say that I think, having gone to school, like, I went to graduate school in international relations, right? And there's always some military guys who go, they have their degree subsidized. It's a scholarship, by the government. And I think, having met some of those guys, you get to know them socially, you become friends. I befriended a couple of them. And I think just sort of as a total civilian, right? I've never seen any hot zones necessarily. I have been carjacked, but that's another story. That's for next episode. I was carjacked in Kazakhstan.
Okay.
We'll pick that
Okay.
up in episode 2. But it's the steady hand, It's the sort of, in Australia, they call them the quiet achiever. That personality type is the guy I'd like to ride out with. If I had to pick my little platoon, right, and I was a platoon leader, I would select for guys who, I think there is also some level of, it's like, it takes a badass to know, like, violence is a mean business. It's nasty, and you don't want to mess with it, and it's not something to joke around about. And I think that the guys I'd want to roll out with are more that type, where it's sort of like, okay, don't try me, like don't even go there with me, because once I flick that switch, you might not like what you can see. As opposed to the guys who are more vocal and more sort of braggadocio.
We call them cowboys.
Cowboys.
Yeah. You don't want cowboys. No.
Yep. I'd want to have you on my platoon, mate. That's good. All right.
Come down to Johannesburg one day. We'll throw you in the bucky with the guys and I'll show you around.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for doing this. We will we'll keep the conversation going. Okay, mate?
Fantastic.
All right. Take care. All right. And keep safe.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me on.
Take care.